guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Stephanie and I'm gonna go ahead and do a November wrap up. So here we go. Okay, so the first book I read was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This was so cute. I really enjoyed it. So just to tell you a little bit about it without trying to give too much away. We start with Vivian. She is heartbroken. Her boyfriend, or I guess not boyfriend, her romantic rendezvous that she has been seeing for a while when the book begins, kind of broke up with her or said he's going back home. And so her and her cousin, pretty much she's comforting, you know, her. She's trying to be a good cousin, trying to be like, it's okay, like, let's go ahead and just let's curse him. Unbeknownst to them, it actually does turn into a real curse. So, but they don't know, obviously. And then we go ahead and jump forward 9 years later, and we kind of catch up with Reese, which is the boyfriend guy that she was heartbroken by. And his dad is like, okay, you need to go back, it's tradition, you have to go strengthen the, I believe it's called like the ley lines for witch, because you know they're witches, they're all witches, wizards and witches, and pretty much they have to go, and every year on this special occasion they have to strengthen the lines and do that. So he's like, well, I'll go and do it. He goes back to Glen Beth, I believe is what it's called. So like as soon as he gets into the town, like weird and strange things start happening to him, and he's like, this is like really odd, like I usually don't have this much bad luck like all at once. And like as soon as he gets in town, his car breaks down and he sees his ex-girlfriend, Vivian. So then yeah, calamity, chaos, all of it starts happening. And then she's like, well, that's weird, like I did put a curse on you, but I didn't really think anything happened, you know, I didn't think it was an actual curse, but it turns out it was. So now pretty much they have to start working together to find out how to break this curse, how to get him, you know, back to normal where things are not like happening. So yeah, honestly, I really loved it. It was a good book, and it was a nice, well, on her part, I guess it was the enemies to lovers, because, you know, she kind of hated him and didn't want him near her. So yeah, it was just a good book, and I really liked it a lot. And I did give this, I believe, a 5-star on my Goodreads page. So yeah, it was awesome. So the second book I read was, oops, I'm not currently reading it. I just like to leave bookmarks in my books, so in case I ever decide to read them again in the future, my bookmark is already in there, ready to use. So a tip, I guess. Okay, so the second book I read was The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. It is pretty much following the cousin, the one that was helping Vivian in the beginning. So yes, I loved it. I loved it as well. It was so good. This was definitely like an enemies to lovers book for sure. So this, The Kiss Curse, takes place a year after the Ex-Hex book ends. So we're following Gwen Jones, which is Vivian's cousin, of course, and then we have Reese's older brother. His like full name is Lewin, but they call him Wells for short, which thankfully, because Lewin, I want to say Ewan sometimes, but I don't think that's right. Anyway, so Yeah, so this takes place a year after. I guess without trying to say too much of how the first one ends, she's upset because Wells didn't attend like this big thing that they had. And I don't know how to explain it without revealing what happens. But anyway, so she is upset, like truly, like just hates him. This one is a real good enemies to lover because she just thinks Wells is like arrogant, very like hoity-toity. So anyways, Gwen has this shop, you know, it's like a little magical shop. And then she finds out that Wells comes into town because he wants to get reacquainted with his roots and just kind of participate, you know, in being a witch and or warlock or whatever. And so he decides he wants to open a shop literally right across from Gwen. So she is immediately so mad. So she is always like making up like rumors and like going into stores sometimes and be like saying loudly while he has customers like, oh my goodness, this is so overpriced, but if you went to my shop, you know, it's half the price for this item. So I was like, oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was so good. It was so funny. But anyway, so the reason I guess why it's called the Kiss Curse is because like they're in his shop. Gwen's at Wells's shop and there's like this weird like box. So she grabs it and they kiss. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I was cursed to kiss you. Like this kiss was terrible. This is never gonna happen again. We gotta stay away from each other. They're like, okay, deal. Done deal. We will not see each other ever again. But then some weird things start happening and like Gwen's magic kind of starts like faltering. So now they're like, oh, well, we have to start working together. So they have to start working together to see what is happening. And why are these like new witches, like a coven coming in? And, you know, everything's kind of like interconnecting. Like, is these new group of witches, like, are they causing my powers to kind of disappear? So yeah, so they have to work together and find out what the heck is happening. So it's, again, chaos and calamity, and I loved it so much. It was such a good story. I just loved it. It was great. And I believe I also gave this one a 5-star as well. Despite it being a 300 odd page book, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the pacing of it. It was just so much fun. Like if you want a really good time, read both of these, The Ex-Hex and The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. Highly recommend. They're so good. They're so funny. And I don't know what else I can say. They're good. They were great. I loved it. So the third book that I read was The 100 Loves of Juliet by Evelyn Skye. Okay, so this is like a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet, and I guess to kind of try to explain this as best as I can. It's kind of like reincarnation, but not on the Romeo's part. It's more of Juliet's part. She kind of gets reincarnated every single time she dies. You know, unfortunately, Romeo was the one that was, well, I guess you could say both were cursed, right? But, you know, as we find out while we're reading the story, that it doesn't really give, unfortunately, a good picture of where maybe this curse originated from or what may have caused it. There's a lot of like different theories in the book, of course. And you know, it doesn't explain, you know, why he has to keep watching Juliet kind of keep being reincarnated, and he kind of has to find her because she's born into different families, different races, religions, like everything. Like he has searched for her across the globe. he has, you know, tried to remind her that she is Juliet from the famous tales of Romeo and Juliet, that she's the actual Juliet. So, you know, sometimes she takes it okay, sometimes she does not, you know, but it all ends tragically, unfortunately, that she passes away before her time. You know, there's been times where he's just completely like left her alone and just not sought her out or nothing, but he just lives in this repeated life of not aging as rapidly. It does state he ages, but not as fast. Like it takes like a really long time for him to like have like 1 year on his life, I guess. So also, he doesn't, like, if he does get injured, he does heal. He doesn't really die. So yeah, there's that. I think I gave this like maybe a 4 stars, maybe like a 3.5, but I went ahead and just rounded it up and gave it a 4. It is a beautiful story because the author, Evelyn, she actually does marry like her true love, and then like not even a year into their wedding, they discover he has like some sort of a lung disease, unfortunately, so he has to go through like a transplant. And thankfully the transplant does take, and you know, he is alive and well right now. And that's kind of like why she wrote this story. Like she's like, I felt like it was, you know, a celebration of love and kind of like reincarnation, like, and I guess that's why she told this story of Romeo and Juliet, like, you know, just being able to come back to your true love, like you had kind of like a second chance. Well, I guess in Romeo and Juliet's case, like 100 chances of, you know, remaining in love, or, you know, keep falling in love, you know, with the new Juliet, or her with, you know, Romeo, not knowing who he is. So I really love that aspect. I guess in the book, how it ends is, you know, they go through this journey and together, and you know, he's trying to stay away from her. He wants to distance as much as he can, but she just keeps finding some like weird things. Like there's some weird things happening here. And well, I guess in this story that we pick up, her name's not actually Julia. She doesn't know herself as Julia. In this story, her name is Helene. So, you know, she's just went through a divorce. She feels a pull to go to Alaska. So she goes to Alaska because she wants to write. So then she meets Romeo. And from there, she just can't stay away from him. And he's trying his hardest, like, to stay away from her, but they can't. They just can't. And they just feel this pull towards each other. And slowly she starts uncovering, you know, these depictions and these things that have happened as she was growing up that kind of pulled her to that maybe she is Julia, but you know, it doesn't quite click until she meets her Romeo again. And you know, he kind of explains to her what's going on. She's like, this is crazy, this is preposterous, I don't believe any of this. And he's like, I know. So but I don't know, I enjoyed it. So that's all I'll say about that. If anyone wants to read this, I definitely would recommend it. It's definitely a different story that I never thought of for a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So if anybody wants to read it, yeah, let me know how you feel about it as well. All right, the fourth book that I read was Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. This was about 561 pages and 19 hours on audiobook. So this was a good time. I really enjoyed this book. I think I liked this book better than her Kingdom of the Wicked series. I liked it a lot. I loved Envy. I loved what's her name, Camilla. I already forgot, sorry. I try to retain so much information, but sometimes, you know, it just doesn't work out. But anyways, okay, so we start with Camilla. She is an artist, she's a painter, and then we come upon the new guy in town. They call him Lord Sinton. Lord Sin for short is what he wants to be called, because he is one of the demons of hell, envy. So yeah, but she doesn't know that, of course. But he's like, you need to paint this throne of hell, I believe, the hex throne. She needs to paint the hex throne for him because he needs to win kind of his, I wouldn't say he lost his kingdom, but his kingdom is kind of on a decline. Like, there's some weird things happening where people are like losing their memories. They can't remember who they are. They can't remember their families. Anger and rage and like needing for self-preservation. So they start committing these awful things in his kingdom, and he wants to, you know, he wants to save it, obviously. So he's like, I need you to paint the hex throne for me. I need to win my kingdom back. She obviously doesn't know that, because she's not supposed to know that, because she's supposed to be a human, and he is one of the princes of hell. But then something weird happens where her ability to paint, because these weird things start happening where her paintings kind of come to life in a way. So her painting abilities are then taken away. So now he's like, okay, here's the deal. I'm the Prince of Hell. You got to come with me. We're both going to go do this thing in the realm, in the underworld, I don't remember what it's called. The underworld, the dark realm. So it's filled with like vampires and werewolves and like all kinds of creatures. We do get to see Wrath. He was the one featured in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. We get to kind of see Emilia and her sister, just briefly. We also get to see a little bit about gluttony and pride, but not too much. I mean, they're not particularly big in the story, but they were there, so we kind of find out about, you know, a little bit about what's going on with Wrath and Emilia, so that was cool. But I really love this book. I liked, because he is envy, so he gets jealous, he gets possessive, so I loved that so much. And you know, there was a little bit of a plot twist in there, and I guess I could kind of see where it was leading from the beginning. So yeah, it was a good little twisty story, and I liked it, and definitely spicy. So I really love that, because I had gone through a couple of stories and books and there just wasn't enough spice. So this one definitely brought the heat. So I gave this book a 5-star. So it was great and I loved it. And I believe she's going to have a second part to this. So I'm excited. I cannot wait to read it. Definitely know where they're going after this. So yeah, that was the 4th book that I read. Sorry, I had to pause for a little bit because my dog started barking, and I don't know, they don't like when kids are playing outside, so yeah. Okay, so I believe we're on the 5th book, The Scarlet Veil by Shelby Mahurin. I still can't pronounce it. I'm sorry guys, I'm trying. Okay, so it was so wonderfully made. I loved this book so much. Like, if you are a real true hardcore like slow burn type of person, this book is for you. My goodness, it was so good, perfectly done. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, you're taking too long for me, but it was the perfect amount. I love slow burn, so for this to have been done so perfectly well, I'm over the moon about it. And it was great. I loved it. She did so good. Just a little synopsis about the book. So this takes place after the events from the Serpent and Dove series. Probably a couple months passed by, so we do get to see some of our favorites. So about Lou, Coco, Reed, Bo as well. It was great. It was great having them in the book. Like, obviously they weren't a big part of the book, but they were still there. Like, they're friends with her, obviously with Celie. She is the main character. This is who it focuses on. And so we come where she's engaged with Jean-Luc. As we remember, he was in the Chaucer, I don't know how to say that properly, with Reed in the trilogy, the first trilogy, the Serpent and Dove trilogy. And so yeah, so they're engaged, and all of a sudden, like, there's these bodies like coming up, like they're finding them, but Jean-Luc doesn't really tell her about them, so she's kind of kept in the dark because she's still dealing with a lot. Like, if you never read, you know, the Serpent and Dove series, like, she went through a traumatic experience because her sister, you know, unfortunately was found dead. So there was like a whole thing there. If you don't know what happened there, I don't want to spoil it, so I won't say too much, but she went through something very traumatic that the witch, the main witch enemy from the books, the trilogy, you know, put her through. So she's kind of dealing with that. Like, so we get flashbacks of like when she was, you know, as soon as she started like noticing like these, her sister kind of acting strangely leading up to her disappearance, and then as we find out that she passed away. So we get, you know, some flashbacks of that, and then we're also getting currently, you know, bodies are coming up. They're finding them drained of blood with 2 little marks on their neck. So we got some vampires. Okay, one day she goes out because she wants to investigate because a friend of hers she found, you know, was dead, you know, the same thing, got the marks on the neck. So she wants to go back out and investigate, find some clues, but then calamity ensues because she gets herself kidnapped by a vampire named Mikal. I hope I'm saying that right. I did listen to the audiobook, but I did listen to this kind of towards the beginning of November, so I apologize if I am saying that wrong. Michal. Mikal? I know it's not pronounced Michael, so no. So anyway, so yeah. So we go through this thing because, you know, he's also trying to find out what's happening, because obviously you don't want that. He doesn't want, I guess, the vampire and humans to kind of cross either. He's trying to keep his vampire kind of clan in order. One of the things that I love seeing this is she was always kind of put as a delicate woman, like, let's, you know, her sensibilities, let's take care of her. She needs to be taken care of because she's right now trying to be a Chaucer because she wants to be able to defend herself. But they're all like, you're a woman, you need to stop, you're not that tough. So she's like, well, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And then after she gets kidnapped and she's has to like kind of rely on herself, on her inner strength. So we find her kind of like growing up a little bit and just becoming her own woman, and just like, it's beautiful. It was a beautiful transformation. I loved finally seeing her kind of do what she wants and, you know, not afraid to ask for what she wants. So I I loved it. This book was so good. I cannot wait to see where this story goes, because that ending, oh my gosh, it was so good. Like finding out about the plot twist and who was involved in it, and just like I kind of felt like, you know, there was bits of like betrayal, you know, did she even know her sister? Like, I don't know. I want to say so much more, but I digress. I cannot, because it was great. It was such a good book. Anybody who has read the Serpent and Dove series, please read this, The Scarlet Veil. So good. I cannot wait for her to come out with her next book. Honestly, so excited. Five stars, obviously. So The Scarlet Veil, amazing. This is the 6th book, One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I kind of like this book. It wasn't too bad. I think I gave this about a 4 stars, which is not bad at all, considering, I mean, in her own books, Taylor, she has like really good books up there. So for this one to be a 4-star, it's fine. She did a fantastic job. I loved it. And I just saw on Hulu, well, I actually watched the movie before I read the book, because I didn't know that the movie was based on this book until I kind of did a deep dive on it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I got to kind of compare, you know, between the book and the movie. So definitely like the book better. I think the movie was very cheesy, very corny. I love Simu, but he was just like over the top, corny and cheesy. So I couldn't. And knowing, because you kind of get his perspective, I guess, more in the movie, but in the book you don't. So I guess to start again. So this follows a story of Emma, Sam, and Jesse. So we follow the present timeline, which is when she gets the phone call that her husband is alive. Okay, right, yeah. And then we get the timeline of when Emma met Jesse back in high school, and then when Emma met Sam, you know, and they became best friends. So we go through that, obviously, to come up to the present and, you know, why everything is kind of the way it is. So we see that Emma just, for the longest of time, had a crush on Jesse, who was a swimmer back in high school. And when he finally like paid attention to her, because they both got in trouble after a party, they started dating. They were high school sweethearts. They got married, and then, you know, they dated for years. So once they finally got married, you know, they were celebrating their 1-year anniversary, and then he's like, well, I'm gonna go, because he's a photographer and she was like a traveling blogger. So he left, you know, with other people on an airplane, like a little airplane, and yeah, they unfortunately crash, and he was the only survivor. So when they tell her that he died, you know, they're like, no survivors. Like, we found everybody else's body, but we couldn't find your husband, so we're going to assume he's dead. So obviously she's heartbroken, trying to put her life together. She moves back, you know, to her hometown, where she said she never wanted to be at. And, you know, once she gets there, she sees that her best friend Sam, who she kind of had lost touch with after high school, because, you know, after they went to college and stuff, she kind of lost touch with him. So seeing him there, it kind of, you know, brought back this sense of like friendship and, you know, just, I guess, safety maybe. So she kind of starts piecing her life together, you know, and he's bringing her out of this, you know, terrible tragedy. And he's always telling her, like, I don't want to replace him. Like, I just want to be with you and love you and build the life with you. And once they, I guess, decide they want to go into that direction is when she gets this phone call that her husband is alive. And it's been like almost 3 years, and the turmoil and the heartbreak that we just go through, like her just trying to figure out, you know, does she still love her husband, who she technically is still married to, or, you know, does her current love, Sam, you know, overpower that, you know? So I think it was just so well written. It was so good. I definitely liked it. Like in the movie, I will say they did feature a lot of her sister, Emma's sister in it, but in the book we don't really get that. And I love family. I have a lot of sisters, so I definitely like the movie on that part, like how she was so close to her sister, how they rebuilt their, you know, friendship, sistership, whatever you want to call it. Like, I thought that was beautiful, but in the book it didn't really explore that, but that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, it was well done. I loved the ending. I loved who she ended up with, how things just, you know, kind of played out. So it was great. It was a good time. So I'm happy I read it. 7th book that I read was A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I really liked this book. It was definitely, I wouldn't say a heavy book, but it does have discussions of like sexual assault. And so you just kind of see this poor girl, like she has gone through so much, and she gets chosen. Her name is Effie Sayer, and she gets chosen to participate in a redesign of like her favorite author's like home. So her favorite author is called Emrys Meridian. Sorry, these words were so hard, and even listening to the audiobook, they have like a beautiful accent, and I'm like, I cannot say that, so I'm trying. But anyway, so yeah, so she gets chosen to go do that. She's ecstatic because her favorite author wrote the story of he's like the king of the fays or something like that. So she was excited, and she is like the only girl in the architecture program in her college. So she was stoked. She got picked of everybody. But again, you know, some terrible things happened to her while she was in college, and I don't want to delve too much into it, but she was called some terrible names. So yeah, trigger warning for sexual assault. There is some shaming, bullying. So yeah, just wanted to give a little warning about that if anybody, you know, needs to know. It's the son of the author, Yanto, I believe is how you say it. And then she also sees Preston, who is also from the college. He's also there to kind of help, but as we find out, he's kind of like on a mission, because he doesn't think that Emrys actually wrote the book. So he's on like his own little mission of trying to prove some things that maybe aren't that great about her favorite author. So she's kind of mad at him, like kind of angry, like stop trying to dig into these things. And he's like, well, if you help me, you know, maybe I'll feature you in this book, in this, you know, in my findings, you know, I will feature you as a co-writer. So she's like, well, okay. But they had such a beautiful relationship, Effie and Preston. It was beautiful. And some of the things that we learned also about Effie, because she has a bit of an interesting background. So yeah, she has like a missing finger as well. So yeah, we learn about all that, you know, as the story progresses, but it's set in such a like eerie, gothic-y type, you know, setting. Like rainy, like it just felt like a rainy, gloomy place to me, and I loved it. So it was great. But just towards the end, like her again being an empowered woman, she gets her voice back, she becomes a badass, and you know, she demands some things towards the end, and to see her come out on top and get what she wants, yes. I loved this book. It was so good. I'm so happy I read it. I know I started it like last month but didn't get to finish it, but I'm glad I restarted it over and stuck through it, and I read it, and I'm so glad I did. I believe she said this is just a standalone book, which is sad, but it did end on a good note. Like it did end with no problems at all. Like I could see this is just a standalone book, and that is all. But if she decides to make a second book, I'll be here for it. I'll read it for sure. So my 8th book that I read, or listened to, I guess. I don't have the physical copy, but I did get to listen to it because finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of waiting, The Woman in Me by Britney Spears became available, and it was only like a 6-hour audiobooks. I was like, yes. So it was a perfect read. I got to listen to it 2 days ago from today, which is the 30th. And it was so good and so sad. Like just hearing, you know, what she was going through, you know, as she was growing up to now where she is free. Like, go Britney. Yes, she's finally free, and I'm so happy for her. But you know, all the things she kind of went through, and it's so true. Like there are some things in there is like she could not do anything that the guys were doing, like what Justin was doing, was all the other guys were doing, how they treated her so wrong, and the media said nothing bad about them, not knowing in reality that, hey, maybe these guys are actually not that great at all. And she's, you know, being slut shamed, and her character's being questioned, like she's actually not the, you know, pop princess, and she's not actually a good person. And it's like, whoa, like it had you believing that Justin was the good guy. And I'm probably guilty of that because I remember that era, you know, not that well, but I do remember when all of that stuff was happening a little bit, and I was like, wow, Britney really did him wrong. But now hearing like her side of the story, she finally was able to say her side of the story. It's like, ugh, I'm so sorry I ever doubted you. You are a good woman, and all you wanted to do was to love your babies and protect your poor babies, and everybody else just did you wrong and failed you, and I'm so sorry. So yeah, it was good. I recommend this book. Yeah, loved it. It was great. It was a good time. I'm so happy I read it. Listened to it, sorry. Reading it, listen to it, it's all the same. It counts, right? It's part of my reading count. Sorry, the light is slowly going away. And sorry if you can hear my son, he is... Okay, we had to just switch for a little bit because the light is slowly going away. Just trying to find the perfect angle. But we're almost done. Okay, so yes, that is all I read this month. 9 books. I'm still reading Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. The holidays really killed me, and it's taken me forever to read, unfortunately, but I will be finishing it hopefully this week. So yeah, just wanted to give you that quick update. And yes, thank you so much. I do have some books that I want to show to you, but I'll probably save that for my TBR just because the lighting is terrible. And yeah, it's coming to the end of the day, so I need to just wrap this up, and I'll show you my new books next time. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. For anybody who has viewed my channel, my videos, thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe, please comment down below. I will see you guys next time. Bye.